So we're going to jump through a couple of different things here today. First off, I am Ben Stiles. I am the field CTO and executive leader of experience engineering for Otava. I have been with the company for almost 2 years now. And once again, very excited to be here. I know the conference is starting to close down or come near the end here. So thank you for the attention and for joining in on this session. So what we're going to talk about here today are a couple different things. I wanted to start off with a quick conversation about who is Otava, give you a little bit of background on who we are, why you might want to hear from me here today. Then we're going to talk about the current security cyber landscape. That's a mouthful. And we're going to talk about scale computing's fit within that landscape. Then we're going to talk about Otava's secure approach to a secure framework, how to unpack some of the security tools in that landscape in a more straightforward way. And then we're going to end it with talking about Scale and Otava being a little bit more secure together and why that matters for everybody. So before I jump straight into the slides though, I just wanted to talk a little bit and set the stage for some of the things that we see in the industry. And that's really around best practices. Best practices are something that we all talk about. Best practices for storage and backup, best practices for scale deployments, best practices for storage, networking, all of these different things. But those best practices are based on application outcomes. Some of them are based on performance metrics. And then you have all of the regulatory compliance components as well that come in on that. So when you're talking about all of these different best practices, it's not always easy to know how does this best practice affect, impact, or potentially lessen your security in another area. So when we think about that, we've got really some fundamental frameworks and things that we do as an industry to help guide us along that. Some of those things are frameworks like the ITIL framework that helps showcase a maturity model and really gives you a guidepost, making sure that you're getting down the path correctly. There's other things like HIPAA and high trust from a regulatory and compliance if you happen to be in the healthcare space. For instance, those things also provide guidance to make sure we've got good data security, that we are doing things in an accurate way and protecting people's data the way that it should be protected. But what that leads to is a lot of different options. So when you look at that technology landscape in general, it feels pretty limitless on the types of things that you can do. Unfortunately, with those limitless possibilities, that comes with a lot of exposure and risk and potential to do things in a non-best practices way or a non-supported format. These are things everybody in this room has probably spent a lot of time focusing on, protecting against, making sure that you're not in a situation where you are going to be exposing organizational sensitive data. So without further ado, let's jump in here a little bit. I wanted to kind of start things off with a background on Otava. So you'll see here we provide data protection, edge computing, and secure and compliant multi-cloud solutions. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but what that really means is we've got a lot of experience operating data centers, operationalizing platforms, and really building places for organizations to jump off from and to take their technology to market. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but let's jump into some statistics here. Let's lay the foundation for some of the different things we see from ransomware and the overall landscape. So we've got some statistics here. You've probably seen many different statistics throughout this conference. Some of the ones that I think pop out to me are things like almost $4.5 million is the global cost of a security breach in 2023. That's a lot of money for organizations. If you're a $20 million run rate business, you're talking about a significant downturn in your organization's profitability right out of the gates. A lot of organizations don't survive from those things, and those are always things that we're really focused on. How do you avoid that? How do you get out of that particular scenario? Some of the other scenarios, or some of the other risk factors that we talk about from like recovering from ransomware are going to be, we've got 76% of data that was confirmed, estimated data right there. exfiltrated data. How does that make people feel? Does that term give everybody the willies in this room right now? Exfiltrated data. Nobody wants to be in that statistic. And so these are the types of situations you want to avoid. You've got 96% of companies where when they go after you, they're also targeting your backups. Very intentional and malicious on that front. TJ, our CEO, earlier this week talked a little about some of that risk and exposure that you get when you're talking about 96% of your organizations getting targeted in their backups as well. These are people that know what they're doing, they're after your money, and they're not going to cut any corners in order to get there. So no one wants their business to be compromised. It's expensive to recover and restore. I had a statistic on the previous slide there. $4.5 million is the cost to recover in that platform. That's globally. In the United States, that's almost $4 million more per incident. So when you see stuff like that, you really have an understanding of the volume of attack, where there is money, where there is potential to take from others. Bad actors are going to be doing that. So I think I've kind of beat that point a little bit there. So we'll talk about this. 93% of companies that lost their data were down for more than 10 days. That's part of that impact when we talk about that cost, that $4.5 million globally per incident. 93% of those people are losing time, multiple 10-digit days. That is not where businesses want to be either. So what can you do to protect your business? This is where it gets fun. We get to pivot from talking about the overall risk and start talking about some of the things that you could do to help mitigate that risk and to make sure you stay on the right approach. I always like to say what starts right stays right, or the older I get, the more I think what starts right has the potential to stay right. It's really hard when you start wrong and you're not following those best practices to end up where you want to be intentionally. And so a lot of what I think is important from a design perspective is being intentional about that design. So what we're going to do is spend the rest of this conversation really talking about how do you be intentional when you're designing? How do you make the right steps? How do you know you're watching the right things and partnering with the right people and the right approaches to get you into a secure and protected environment where you're not part of those statistics, where you're on the other side of that. You get to be the 4% instead of the 96% that's getting targeted. So S.E.C.U.R.E, by design, this is the scale platform HyperCore. The platform that we've got here should be pretty familiar to anybody attending this conference. It's pretty basic from the overall flow. Everybody here is probably familiar with their hyper-converged infrastructure model, or HCI there. Some of the nice things that does from a security perspective is it cuts out your overall vulnerability and the attack surface that people have within their environment. You've got components that are tightly controlled within each other. It's common systems. They're not handing it off to multiple different layers or vendors or additional components within that stack. And so what that means is you have a lot less attack surface area. So this is why that matters. When you look at an actual map of an attack surface area, what you're going to see here are 3 different ways that people typically connect into their environments. We've got VPN, remote desktop, and S.E.C.U.R.E. S.E.C.U.R.E is the scale platform approach. You'll see here from VPN and remote desktop, how many people have used or are actively using those two? Pretty good group. Yep, it's pretty hard to get away from the VPN stuff. A lot of times those exist without you even knowing them now, thanks to talented network engineers that try and make that a little bit more seamless for you. So taking a look at that, it should stand out pretty quickly there. If you're looking at the steps required in order to make a function like a secure link into your technology environment, you've got multiple steps. Choose a VPN protocol, choose a VPN server software, install and configure it, configure your router, set up user accounts, test the VPN, enter the LAN IP for cluster, The cluster UI opens, and then you get to maintain a software-based VPN connection. That's a lot of steps. And when you start to look at some of those things, step 3 looks a little pesky. You've got to install and configure VPN server software. What are you going to pick? What are the best practices for that software? Did you do it correctly? Lots of options. When you look at configuring a router, same type of thing. For some people, that's a very easy process. For other people, if you don't know what you're doing, you might end up with some route statements or some configurations in there that are going to expose your business to additional risk. So when we talk about that from an overall risk avoidance perspective, we can see right here that secure link approach from S.E.C.U.R.E is directly focused on lowering the complexity and therefore the attack surface of your environment. You've got that great little foundation there. And what you're going to do is start to notice the benefits of that. If you are building platforms where you are going from 10 steps to 3 steps in your intentional design and your approach for the environment, you're slowly reducing those limitless number of attack vectors and getting more specific about your overall security outcomes. So that's a little bit about the S.E.C.U.R.E approach and how they take security very seriously, very intentionally from the ground up, using the HCI stack and bringing that together. This is the Otava S.E.C.U.R.E framework. So when we look at this, we really tried to break this out into multiple options for people to look and think about it in a programmatic way, just to be able to step through it and go, do we have our stuff covered? What are some of the things that you need to be focused on here? So I'm going to spend a little bit of time running through each of these different areas and talk about some of the tools and capabilities that we've got along the way and things that you can be doing in order to bring down that overall complexity. So the first one here, shrink. This is a big one. We saw a big example of that shrink framework on that last slide. We went from 10 steps to 3 steps for a more secure connection, decreasing the complexity of the overall environment. That's really the intent of shrink. How do you make sure you are not open to the outside world, that you are reducing the level of vulnerabilities that you have, and you've got a very clean control plane for how people get in and out of your environment and touch your data. So some of those components are managed firewall, MFA, and web application firewall. How many people are doing all 3 of those things here today? Awesome, I see a couple of hands here. If I take web application firewall out of that, how many people are participating? All right, a lot more hands here. Perfect. It's kind of what I was expecting from an overall distribution there. But these are some of the things as you're being intentional from a setup perspective, getting your firewalls, having MFA, having web application firewalls, things that are being intentional about the incoming and outgoing traffic is a great way to set yourself up from a good shrinking your attack surface. Next component here is examine. So monitor and analyze anomalies and event threats. So when you're examining your data here, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. The important part is to have some of the common components of, are you logging in your environment? Do you have visibility into your environment? And are you examining that data? Putting it under a microscope, being able to do things like FIM reports or vulnerability scans, and being able to produce that reports gives you that continued visibility into your environment, because security is really a changing landscape. So one of the things that I think always stands out to me when you're talking about security is it's not consistent. Secure today doesn't mean secure 2 weeks from now. It doesn't mean secure a month from now. I often refer to that as infrastructure drift or platform drift, where there are going to be new vulnerabilities, new patches, new code updates. You are not going to be consistent and secure today or a month from now with today's practices. So the examination here makes a big difference, because that's going to help you connect in, get visibility into your environment, and start integrating the tools that are going to drive that visibility. So the next thing here is contain. The attack vectors to reduce the proliferation, easy for me to say, across your environment. So when you talk about containing, this is really about making sure that you have watchers inside of your environment, that you are doing things intentionally from a anti-malware on servers, on endpoint, and email security. These are the three most common vectors for bad actors getting into your environment, because these are the ways that people interact with your environment. So you've got the endpoint and email. This is where users come into the technology stack. That means you've got risk. Users like to click buttons and do different things. A secure platform is a platform that doesn't have anybody in it. They're not very functional, they're not very useful. Exactly, but they are secure. And that's the challenge. Nobody's figured out a revenue model based around running a secure platform that doesn't do anything and you can't access it. So when we look, did I skip one there? I did. So when we look at that from a contained perspective, it's really about having secure tools at your endpoints so that if something does happen, you've got quick visibility into that. You know what your management plan is. You can build recovery strategies around each of those different components if you've got that intentionality coming out of the gates. From a recovery perspective, this stat always stands out to me. 46% of organizations don't have a disaster recovery plan in place. The one good news on that is from an IBM data breach report in 2023. I am hopeful that if any of you are on that list in 2023, that we've made progress in the last 2 years, and that you've got a path towards having a full disaster recovery plan in place. How many people here test their DR strategies on a regular basis? Couple of hands here, that's good to see. How often does anybody see recovery issues? How often are you finding issues? All the time? So what do you think that's telling you? Exactly. It's telling you that those tests are absolutely appropriate for your organization, and that you have also got good visibility into your stack because you are actually seeing those things. A lot of times if people tell me, I've been running these backup recovery tests and we never run into an issue, the first thing that goes through my head is, are you testing it right? Are you sure you're testing it right? Are you absolutely sure that you are testing this right? Because things do change, configurations change. Not every company has a perfect change architecture review board or a change control process in general. So if you don't have those things, this is where change peaks up in your environment and makes it a little bit more difficult. That testing and being thoughtful about how you're testing and making sure that the recovery matches the business need, that is going to help so that you can recover more quickly and you're continuing to improve by going through that testing cycle, validating that data, and making sure that just because you could recover last month, now you know you can this month and this month. And let me tell you, when you're getting those reports and you are seeing that on a regular basis, it's a whole lot easier as an IT administrator to sleep at night when you know you've got a paper trail of testing and validation and scrubbing your environment. So next we're going to move into evaluate. This is really about the continual improvement of it, also known as patch management, because this is a lot of the way that we get the updates to help continually improve our security posture. I imagine many of you are subscribed to different news services that'll let you know if a particular product that you are leaning heavily on in your environment is actually available or experiencing a 0-day vulnerability. That visibility for you to get into your improvement there, that visibility is what's going to drive that improvement. So being able to do the scans, to get patching, and then understand exactly what your vendor patch cycles are, what to expect from a recovery or a rollback in those scenarios. Those are all things that you're building this continual maturity around your security base. I like that, the security Sherpa on the bottom there. Every once in a while you need somebody else who can come in and poke on your environment and give you a couple different perspectives here. So hopefully we're giving a couple of those here today. So from a defense summary perspective, we talked a little bit about starting with a secure platform, leveraging firewalls, multi-factor authentication, VPN tunneling for securing your communications when you're online and not directly in the site you want to connect to, antivirus, digital learning, file integrity, encryption and patch management. All of these things start to create an ecosystem and a sphere of understanding your environment, understanding where your risks are going to be, where you have exposure, and helping you be intentional about plugging those, mitigating, or evolving and improving that environment. This is something I'm really excited to talk about here today. Managed backup solutions for edge computing. This is a big one for Otava and S.E.C.U.R.E, bringing the Veeam partnership together and helping create an ecosystem of additionally rich tools. This is about partner expansion. The ecosystem of S.E.C.U.R.E is growing. I think everybody sees it here. It is a conference that continues to get bigger and bigger. I was not here last year. I'm happy to be here this year. Some of my colleagues were here last year. You see us come back, and we went from a attendee to a sponsor of the event because we like what S.E.C.U.R.E is doing, what they bring to the table from a security perspective, and that partnership of being able to deliver compute and data protection into one rolled up solution is very effective and something we're very excited to bring to market.